end zone. Underthrown. Touchdown. Trey Tucker. To the end zone it goes. Caught. Touchdown. Armand Ben.
It's Bearcat Blitz time on the Believe Network. I'm your host, Russ Heltman. He's my co-host, Neil Meyer. Russ Heltman of Cincinnati Bearcats on SI and Neil Meyer of the Front Office News. Cincinnati Rivals. You can find him at frontofficenews.com. We are available on Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe, rate, and review there. And also subscribe on our YouTube page, Talking Cats with Russ Heltman. That's where you can find player interviews, coach post-game interviews, pre-game interviews, all that good stuff on the YouTube page, Talking Cats with Russ Heltman, plus all of our podcasts there as well. Cincinnati falls to Pitt in epically brutal fashion for fans at the game and all over the world. 28-27 loss for Cincinnati at the hands of Eli Holstein, Pat Narduzzi and company, with Desmond Reed just running all over the place across this Bearcats defense. We'll tell you all about it in just a moment. Bet Online, though, they have a message for you. It's the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. We love having them as our presenting sponsors. Bet Online has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When the game's over, head over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Bet Online. The game starts here. Good show for you all today. We'll recap the brutal second half blown lead, 21-point lead blown by Cincinnati, in another game where they just can't get the job done at home against an FBS opponent. Still, this deep into the Scott Satterfield tenure, they have yet to beat an FBS opponent at home. We'll touch on that, get to the fact that the path to 6 wins got a lot more teetering with that loss to Pitt, and we'll take a break, get to the Miami betting line, another close game projected by the odds makers, who were right on the money with this past Saturday with a 1.5-point spread in the Pitt UC game. We'll get to the 3-point spread in the Miami and UC game. And then, is this D-line too far gone? Is it too much to overcome the injuries that have happened already, even with the addition of Dante Corleone? We'll get to some numbers that are still striking, even with how well he played in this outing. All that coming up on Bearcat Blitz after these messages. Neil will bring you in now, my man. I'll kind of leave the floor open to you. 28-27 loss for Cincinnati. They give up a 27-6 lead midway through the third quarter is when they held that, and the offense went flat. They somehow, Neil, managed to blow a 27-6 lead despite not turning the ball over once in the contest. Just another astounding new way for this program to find defeat.
Yeah, absolutely, Russ. And obviously you mentioned the 21-point blown lead. I mean, the offense was rolling the first half. And then obviously it started with the Brendan Sorsby 52-yard touchdown there to Jamoy Mays. And Russ, on that big explosive play, that really kicked off the momentum, because your first drive stalls. Then you get the big play there to Jamoy Mays, and then things start to roll there for Cincinnati offensively. Obviously on the beautifully thrown ball from Sorsby, Jamoy Mays through contact, fought out of bounds, came back in, huge touchdown. Then the offense starts rolling, but then the second half adjustments start to come in. They get complacent. I think that transition right before halftime, Russ, really changed the game momentumly. You have the missed field goal. That was a chip shot from 25 yards. And if you watch the replay, which, Russ, I'm not sure if you had the time to go back and really watch the game a second time.
Mason Fletcher cost them 3 points there by putting the laces in, not out. Just inexcusable from a veteran player to make a mistake like that. Just absolutely inexcusable. Another special teams mistake that ultimately cost Cincinnati a football game. Just like it did last year against Miami, a special teams mistake cost them a home football game against a rival. Continue, Neil.
Yeah, but absolutely there. I mean, the snap was a little bit off. The hold was laces in. That's 3 points there on the board. And then that 3 points turns into 3 on the other end because of I don't know what that final play was before half, Russ. I definitely thought there should have been 0 seconds left on the clock, but
it said 0 for like 30 seconds while
yeah.
they were still trying to figure it out. It was crazy.
So then they give him 1 second on the clock there, which ultimately leads to a 51-yard field goal. Boom, that's 21-6 there at the halftime. And then right there, Desmond Reed and Eli Holstein took over the second half. I mean, they just simply had no answer for Desmond Reed. And Russ, there was a reason why he was an All-American at the FCS level. He's trending on pace to be an All-American on the FBS level as well. But Cincinnati just had no offense there in the second half and no way to stop on the defensive side and find ways to contain Desmond Reed. But the huge takeaway from this there, and the positive on the defensive side, Dante Corleone back and healthy. It was great to see him get the response that he was able to get from the student section, the Bearcats faithful. Seeing him play 69% of the defensive snaps was huge because we didn't know what kind of snap count or pitch count he would be on heading into this one or what his kind of role was. But he was out there. He made a huge impact. And Russ, we're going to talk about the defensive line.
Neil, I don't think you could say he made a huge impact, man. A huge impact would be winning the football game and making a game-changing play to win the game. He didn't make much of an impact. They gave up 6.8 yards per carry before sacks. And he played well at that, and they still gave up that bad of a number from this defense. He was mostly a non-factor despite playing really well in his own right. It's hard to make an impact as one individual player at the nose tackle position when nobody else is largely backing you up behind you.
Yeah, the defensive line, Russ, we're going to talk about it. They struggled to get pressure outside of Dante Corleone. I mean, Dante was facing double and triple teams most of the games, but you get the 1 sack from Eric Phillips. But outside, Eli Holstein had plenty of time in the pocket back there, especially in the second half. But what the defense cannot allow there, Russ, and we're going to talk about it, 330 yards in the second half alone after you hold the offense there in the first half to just about 105, 140 yards roughly in that kind of range. But what you can't allow a team to do is get 330 yards in the second half, especially in a game where your offense was dominating the first half. But then, Russ, you're looking down at this stat sheet from Pitt. Desmond Reed had 94 yards after the catch there in his 6 receptions for 106 yards. So you take that away, Russ. The 6 catches, he's averaging 2 yards from the line of scrimmage there in his 6 completions or 6 receptions. And then he turns up the speed and he gets 96 yards there in yards after catch. That just simply can't happen. And then Desmond Reed just ran all over Cincinnati, 19 carries, 148 yards. But the second half, Russ, I mean, it's inexcusable. It really is. 330 yards in the second half in a game where your offense is controlling tempo. And I mean, you're looking at Cincinnati. They put up 450 yards of offense. But anytime you get outgained 330 to 100, roughly 105, 110 there in the second half, that just simply cannot happen, especially at home. They had 164 total yards in the second half. So 330, you're getting outgained by 200 roughly in the second half at home. That's simply just inexcusable. And Russ, we have to talk about it. The rushing attack should have been the focus there in the second half because Corey Kiner was running all over Pittsburgh. I mean, he was averaging 7.5 yards per carry. So overall, I mean, in that situation, when you're up like that, I think they were trying to continue to air it out there in the second half. But in that point, you got to take what's working for you there and really continue dominating on the run game because Corey Kiner was getting to the second level, getting whatever he wanted there in the run game. 20 carries, 149 yards. Anytime you can see a guy like Corey averaging 7.5 yards per carry, you might as well feed him because this team's going to need games where Corey gets 20, 25 yards or 25 carries a game in order to this offense be successful. So there's a lot of things to really take away, but defense in there in the second half, Russ, it just was not it. Unfortunately, big plays after big plays have been the topic heading into this season. Cincinnati allowed 3 big explosive plays there in the second half. Keontae Mumfeld had 2 of them, and then Desmond Reed's big touchdown run as well. So explosive plays came back to haunt Cincinnati, and in a way, with the new defensive scheme, you can't really allow that to happen, especially there at home at Nippert Stadium.
I feel like a broken record, Neil. I feel like a broken record. That's what it's getting to be at this point with this regime. 13 more big plays allowed by this defense. Another 6 penalties, 3 crucial penalties. 1 on the final drive of the game to give Pitt a free first down on 4th and 4 by yelling out disconcerting calls. That's been a point of emphasis all offseason. They hammered that home all off season. The referees were clear that they would be calling that this season. It's already been called a few times in the first couple of weeks of the year in crucial moments, and that was one of them right there. That cannot happen. And they would not have called that unless it was clearly being yelled out by the Cincinnati defensive lineman on that play. I forget exactly who got, I think it was Eric Phillips.
It was Cam Wilson.
Cam Wilson, a veteran player at that, trying to call out a bunch of BS. I refuse to believe the refs made that up and threw a flag on Cincinnati out of nowhere unless they saw Cam Wilson audibly yelling that out during the game. So that can't happen.
And it was loud in Nippert Stadium too, but they definitely had to hear something in order to throw
exactly. It was loud at Nippert Stadium, so they had to have heard him yell that out over the loudness of the fans to be able to confuse the Pitt offensive lineman, yada yada. What all in all, that ultimately gives Pitt the ability to go down the field and kick the game-winning field goal to make it 28-27 instead of 27-25. But Neil, it's special teams issues. It's the run game on defense, inability to stop it. It's dumb penalties and dumb mistakes. The kind of three horsemen of last season's ineptitude. I mean, I would say the third horseman, probably big plays. You can filter that in with we can mix that in with dumb mistakes, just slot them in and out for each other. So far through two games, and this happened in the 38-20 win over Towson as well, that there was some of this. They haven't cleaned any of these issues up, and it's just a major problem right now. And I picked them to win even with Dante Corleone because I thought he would be able to impact the defensive line enough to be able to slow down the run game, give Cincinnati the ability to salt this game away, which they just never did. And when you think about, I am at a loss right now with what I should do with this team picking wise the rest of the season, Neil, because Dante Corleone played about as well as you can possibly expect him to play coming off of that injury and that amount of time out of hand-to-hand combat action. 76.3 overall grade that led all players among PFF grading on Cincinnati's defense. 81.1 run defense grade. He was elite against the run, and still they gave up 196 yards on the ground, 210 yards, of sack adjusted rush yards, 6.8 yards per carry with Dante Corleone in the game for 49 snaps. Like you mentioned, nearly 70% of the plays. And Neil, like at some point, somebody's going to have to find a way to turn pressures into sacks on this defensive line. It was a massive issue last year. They couldn't do it. It's a massive issue again. Neil, take a guess at how many pressures they had on Eli Holstein in this game and how many sacks they had on him.
Well, they only had 2 sacks, so they probably only had about 4 pressures, maybe.
25 pressures on Eli Holstein, according to PFF, who really only gave Cincinnati 1 true sack on the day that they credited a player with. They do the sack crediting a little bit different than regular traditional stats, but 25 total pressures on Eli Holstein, Neil, and they sacked him officially 2 times.
Yep,
25.
And the stat broadcast has 5 official quarterback hurries as well. So overall, you got to find ways to convert those into sacks.
It's unbelievable, man. They let Eli Holstein, a guy who's basically a statue back there, get 5 seconds to 7 seconds of play. He didn't really go through his reads really much at all the whole game. It's not like he torched him with his mind. He literally just let the broken plays come open and hit wide open wide receivers for much of the afternoon, especially in the second half. It's things that should be cleaned up, should be fixed up. And overall, it's not going to get fixed in terms of the entire defense until they figure out a way to slow down the run. And I don't understand how they're going to do it if you have Dante Corleone, an all-American nose tackle, arguably the best nose tackle in the entire country, as the heart and soul of your defense, and you still, with 3 down linemen and that guy at the point of attack, cannot find a way to get push and pressure up the middle on these run plays. They're getting smacked in the mouth this year again. They got smacked in the mouth all last season. And I'm struggling to understand how I can pick them to beat Miami on the road after Miami gets 2 weeks to prepare for this team. And this team and UC has just never found a way under Scott Satterfield to close these games out. I'll toss it back to you with this, Neil. We just touched on the defense. Chad Brindle of Bearcat Journal. And I don't know if anybody, I unfortunately had to be here at the station, not unfortunately, but had some other duties that I had to cover here at the station. So I couldn't be at the game on Saturday in person. My first question would have been, where was Corey Kiner in the fourth quarter? What made you think you should go away from Corey Kiner after he had 3 carries for 43 yards in the fourth quarter and touched the ball 20 times total rush-wise for 149 yards? Why wasn't he touching the ball every single play? Why aren't you running the ball 2 to 3 times a series? I cannot understand it, Neil. I can't understand the thought process, the game planning, and the overall inability to execute when you have a 21-point lead at home with an offensive line that is eating on the ground and a player that is averaging checks notes 7.5 yards a carry with a 28-yard long. He didn't have an 80-yard long in this game. He was mowing down 8 to 15-yard carries almost every 2 to 3 touches, and they went away from him.
Yep.
It's mind-blowing. And I'm sure Bearcats fans are very frustrated. And it's frustrating to watch this kind of quote-unquote unbelievable scenario play out until it becomes believable, more and more believable each and every week. It's completely unacceptable, Neil, for this fan base to have to experience a year and 2 weeks into the Scott Satterfield regime, not one FBS win at Nippert Stadium, a place where they had lost 10 times total between 2015 and 2022. You have yet to beat an FBS school once at your home stadium. The excuses, we're out of them. You're out of excuses at this point for this regime. And Neil, I texted you after the game. It's looking like DEFCON 2 in a must-win scenario. If they go into Miami and lose back-to-back games to close the Battle of the Victory Bell rivalry series, it's going to be the lowest point for this program in at least the past 15 to 20 years. No doubt.
Yeah, Russ, and I know we talked about, obviously, about what this season could be like heading into this season. We talked about the importance of these next 2 weeks here for this season alone in terms of making that bowl game, because the non-conference, these first 3 games were crucial because of the Big 12 slate that you have. But you fall at Pittsburgh in a heartbreaking fashion. Now you're heading into Miami, who has 2 weeks to prepare. And this Miami game, Russ, there's more on the line for this Miami game now after what happened on Saturday than what's actually was relying on it heading into the season.
The bowl hopes are on the line. They have to win this game or they will not be going to a bowl this season. There is no doubt in my mind. It is on the line here. There are not 6 wins left on the schedule if they don't beat Miami. Not 5 more wins left on the schedule if they don't beat Miami Saturday.
Because Miami, let's be honest, Russ, they're going to have all the energy. The rivalry game just got canceled. They have 2 weeks to prepare for this, which could be a good and a bad thing. They could come in here, they could get complacent, or they could be complacent up there on the road, but having 2 weeks to prepare for your rival where you beat them last year in a heartbreaking fashion, now they have all the energy. But, Russ, we've talked about it. Even those who watched the press conference, it was asked about that 2nd and 2 play where Corey Kiner was off the field. But they said that play with Evan Pryor was an RPO option. They went with the pass option there. So that was really the definition of that kind of play there. But overall, you just have to.
So it just makes no sense. Like make it make sense that you had a 21-point lead and you didn't turn the ball over, and somehow you allowed Pitt to have enough time at the end of the game to go down the field and kick a game-winning field goal. They chose the pass of the RPO. Fantastic. Good stuff.
So overall, I mean, it was just the little things. We've heard all offseason about the discipline and the explosive plays. Russ, the 3-3-5, let's be honest, it's been exploded now twice in back-to-back weeks for explosive plays where wide receivers outran this whole defense. We saw it last week with Towson. We saw it this week again with Desmond Reed and Keontae Mumfeld. You have to find a way to limit those explosive plays, because what we saw there on the first drive, Russ, the 3-3-5, Eli Holsting had no idea what that 3-3-5 was, because Josh Minkins was played perfectly in the end zone. Stops a big drive, comes away with the first turnover of the season. But outside of that, there was no turnovers. Cincinnati couldn't force the pressure to get to the turnover rate. They just have to find ways to turn that defensive line up a notch, get some pressures. Because Dante Corleone, Russ, you and I both know he's going to be facing double, triple teams just about every game, every play this season. So somebody else on that edge or the linebackers are going to have to find ways to get pressure there. But overall, the defense really has to find ways to lock in, because if you continue to allow these explosive plays, Russ, you mentioned 13 of them on Saturday versus Pitt, it's going to be another long season. You cannot allow teams to come in and continuously throw over the top for 30, 40-yard chunk gains, especially when you're in the new defensive scheme where you have the 3 safety look as well.
The more things change, the more they stay the same. Despite the program being much tighter, much closer, it seems, the post-game comments a lot tighter, it seems, that they can maybe bounce back from this and get back on the right side of the win-loss column next week against Miami. Despite all that, it's not happening on the field. The mistakes are still prevalent 1,000%. The team speed is still lacking 1,000%. The overall talent still lacking 1,000% over these first 2 games compared to expectations for these first 2 games. And to go up 27-6 and then blow it completely, I shouldn't even talk about talent in the first place. I should have put the coaching first before the team talent. That is coaching. To blow a 21-point lead in less than 27 minutes is coaching. That's all that boils down to, especially when none of your players commit a mistake like a turnover. That is that catastrophic. There were some penalties here and there, yes, but that's on coaching, man. That was a coaching loss through and through, and it just continues to leave Scott Satterfield and his regime with 0 FBS wins at home in the past 14 games overall on a schedule. It's just unbelievably bad. Taking a quick break here on Bearcat Blitz, coming back with a look at the betting line. Another tight matchup expected for Cincinnati and what is quickly turned into a must-win football game, especially with how some of the other teams in the Big 12 are looking that are going to be on the Cincinnati schedule. Back after this. Neil, looking at the Miami matchup, turning our sights to that just a little bit here. And we touched on the defensive line a lot. I personally think it's a wrap. I don't know how they're going to be able to make that defensive line palatable at all the rest of the way. It's going to have to be the offense reaching a 30 to 35 point mark every single week to give them a chance to win football games. The defense is just, it is what it is. They don't have the personnel to be able to run a 3-3-5 right now. They don't have the juice on either inside of their defensive line to be able to maintain the edge with just 3 down linemen and be able to maintain a push with just 3 down linemen. And they're not changing schemes in the middle of the season. So I don't know, Neil, what do you tell me if you differ from me, but from what I've seen over the first 2 weeks against a Towson team that put up nearly 200 yards rushing and a Pittsburgh team that put up nearly 200 yards rushing, these are 2 of the kind of lower tier outfits they're going to see all season long, with Miami being the last of those lower tier outfits. It's going to be top 50, top 60 teams the rest of the way here, and they're going to bludgeon this defensive line. I just don't see how they don't.
Yeah, absolutely, Russ. And obviously you talk about Towson being able to rush for 200 yards on the ground. Pittsburgh was able to run all over Cincinnati there in the second half there on the ground as well behind Desmond Reed. But overall, Russ, you're looking at some of these teams heading into the back half of the schedule that we know how powerful the Big 12 is in terms of running back heavy. And I mean, you're getting into conference play where you're looking down Texas Tech. They're going to see Taj Brooks right off the rip. One of the best running backs in the Big 12. Week 6 there, week 5, actually, week 6, UCF. They have one of the best running back rooms in the country behind RJ Harvey, Penny Boone. They're going to be able to put some offense up there from the running game. So it's going to be interesting to see.
RJ Harvey, number 8 in the nation rushing. Cam Scatabo at Arizona State, a game that we thought should be a win for Cincinnati. They are better than Cincinnati right now. They're a better football team, and that might not be a win. Cam Scatabo, top 3 in the nation in rushing right now with 155 yards per game. Let's keep going down the line. DJ Giddens, number 14 in the country, Kansas State. Let's keep going down the line. Kansas, Devin Neal, number 21 in the country. Let's keep going down the line. Quali Conley, number 25 in the country. Arizona, they don't play Arizona this year, but you kind of get the point here. There is a lot of good rushing talent in the Big 12 and no visible good run defense outside of Dante Corleone on the Bearcats defensive line. CJ Donaldson, top 50 rusher in the country right now as well.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see how does Cincinnati's defensive line really tune in and make these adjustments. Obviously, they're banged up. Everybody knows that, but they still got to find ways to create that depth and create pressure. But Russ, if they're going to allow teams to come in to Nippert Stadium or on the road this season and put up 200, 250 yards a game on the ground, it's going to be a long season. The defense will not be able to get off the field there if you're allowing teams to run for that much total yards of offense each and every game. In the last two games, Russ, Pittsburgh put up close to 200 yards on the ground. Towson put up close to 200 yards on the ground. But if you're allowing teams to come in and put 200, 220 yards of offense in terms of rushing offense on the ground, it's going to be a long season for the defense, and the offense is going to have to really rely and put up points and really can't miss opportunities there on the offensive side if your defense is continuing to get worn down in the run game. So overall, it's going to be interesting to see how does this defense really align. I don't see them changing schemes. I really don't. But overall, it's going to be interesting to see what really comes down to it, especially heading into Big 12 play when you know the running backs are just going to get better and better each and every week.
Miami, at least they can't run the ball, albeit through one game, very well so far this season with their running back Jordan Brunson. I think with just 8 carries for 33 yards, they rank right now 134th nationally in total rush yards per game, although they have, like we mentioned, played one game total so far this year. The 13-6 loss to Northwestern. 54.6%, Neil, is what Cincinnati's looking at. If we do a quick look at the next game against Miami, -1.5 Cincinnati is on the betting spread. So it's literally the same exact spread as Cincinnati had going into last week's game against Pitt. 45.4% chance from ESPN for Miami to win this game at home. It's just going to be another really tough, close battle, most likely, Neil. And to me, they have to win this game. I mean, this is arguably, you could make an argument that this is the most important game of Scott Satterfield's head coaching tenure in the history of his career. Because if he loses this game, I don't know how you're going to get fans back in the stands, get fans excited for the rest of the season unless they go on a 3 to 4 game winning streak, which there is no sign of that happening anywhere in the offing looking forward or looking in the past. So this is a kitchen sink game, Neil. This is everything right now. The program will be left for dead by this fan base if they do not win this football game on Saturday, and rightfully so. To lose back-to-back games to a rival you had beat, 18 or 19 games in a row before Scott Satterfield arrived? I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. I gave him the benefit of the doubt on the 6-6 projection. But so far, this team is more talented in my eyes for sure, but has not overcome the coaching malpractice that has gone on through the first 2 weeks, and especially in the second half of last week's game. And to me, this is the season for the Bearcats, and it's also the season for the Redhawks. What people might fail to understand is this is the biggest game of the year for Miami as well. They don't care about the MAC title. It doesn't matter in the grand scheme of their program compared to beating Cincinnati in the final game of this rivalry. If they lost the MAC championship and won this game, they wouldn't say it's a success, but behind closed doors, that's a success for Miami, and they would relish in doing that.
This is Miami's Super Bowl.
Right. It's their Super Bowl.
It's
the biggest game for them all year.
They made it known over the years that this game is their Super Bowl. I mean, you saw how they reacted last season after winning the victory bell. This is Miami's Super Bowl,
to me,
heading into the final year. This
is the most important game so far of Scott Satterfield's, arguably his entire career, but definitively of his Bearcats career, because I don't understand how you're getting the fan base back on board with this guy if he can't go into Miami and get a win.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what comes out, but you have to, if you're Scott Satterfield and the Cincinnati Bearcats, you have to find a way to go on the road to Yager Stadium and come away with a win. But Russ, it's also worth noting, this
all the chips in, baby. You got to find a way to get it done. This is everything. I mean, it is DEFCON 2 for this program. I don't understand how they're going to get the fan base back if they don't get this win.
But it's also worth noting too, Russ, this is the first time that this game has been played at Miami in 5-6 years? Because this has been the game that's been at neutral sites at Paul Brown, Paycor, whatever people call it, different things now. Obviously now it's Paycor, but this is a game that has been played at neutral sites for the last few years. Since I started covering the team in 2020, this is the first time this game is being played at Miami. So to think about that, it's going to be a sight to see on Saturday, but this is an all in. You have to put your chips in there, and it's a must-win game for Cincinnati on Saturday.
And Neil, you know how we said Arizona State, that was a projected win before the season, and it was on ESPN's matchup predictor? Not anymore. Arizona State, a 60.3% favorite to win against UC. Let's just go through the projections and see how Cincinnati fares. Projected to beat Houston, projected to lose to Texas Tech, projected to lose to UCF handily, projected to lose at home to Arizona State, projected to lose at Colorado, projected to lose at home against West Virginia, projected to lose at Iowa State, projected to lose at Kansas State, and projected to lose at home at TCU. Neil, as of right now, this and the Houston game are the only games on the schedule that ESPN's matchup predictor 2 weeks into the season has Cincinnati winning. 3 total wins projected. Like the low-end scenario that so many, I think, people labeled as haters by UC fans and the like projected before the season. It's computer breaking down wise, it's looking like that from where we stand right now. They have to flip the script, and they have to start doing it this weekend against Miami. There is no way they are making a bowl game with the way this program is playing and the way they have the product they put on the field over the first 2 weeks if they can't get a victory against Miami. We'll leave it at that. Come back to you later on in the week here on Bearcat Blitz to give a full rundown, full look at Miami. Neil will be there on Saturday. I am excited to be there on Saturday as well. And what is a massive, massive game for both programs. Bearcat Blitz. Been listening to it on the Believe Network. We're presented by Bet Online.
6, Ritter to the end zone, looking for Pierce. Did he hang on? Yes. Touchdown. Hate my back as I've been around. Here he goes again. Busts free. Jerome Ford down the side.